Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Play, Pause, Rewind. We are back for our second episode of 2023. We are now on as many episodes as there are weeks in a year. Niles, how do you feel about that specifically? Please give a speech.
Well, I'm just enthralled by it. It's the greatest news I've ever heard since sliced bread, and I'm all for it. We've been at this for what, 2 years now, or something like that, or getting
2 years,
close
yeah.
there.
I think our first episode came out on like a January 30th or something. So,
Yeah, something like that. But yeah,
yeah.
it's quite the achievement. I mean, we're over halfway to 100.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Look
hell
at that.
yes.
Look at that. But how
Yeah.
have you been the last couple weeks?
Well, I've been good. I'm trying to remember when was our last one, because our last episode was Glass Onion, and that was
Mm-hmm.
right after the holidays. So
It was.
it's been a good start to the year overall. I've been trying to make some resolutions and stick with them, and still hold on to my sanity at the same point. But I've been all right. How about you, Dylan?
Bad, kind of.
Yeah.
I lost my job. Niles
Oh.
knows this, but
Hmm.
yeah, I got laid off, workforce reduction nonsense. So that sucks, but I've
Yeah.
been using my spare time to watch old episodes of ours to find TikTok content. So
There we go.
um keep an eye out for that. I've watched if you've never watched 7 hours of yourself talk, it's really something. It's but yeah, otherwise doing all right,
Are you
Things are
used to the sound of your voice yet, or?
Oh, I got used to that a long time ago just from doing YouTube stuff. Like
Oh yeah.
you really it like the first several videos I made, I just hated editing so much because I hated the sound of my own voice. But by
Yeah.
video 10 or 12, you hear it once you hear it enough, like it just becomes like everybody else's voice where it's just that's what it sounds like.
Hmm.
But it took a while to get there. I'm gonna turn my light down a little bit. Hold on. I'm a little glossy. That's
You're
better.
just letting your natural aura shine. That's all you're doing.
Yeah,
Your
exactly.
whiteness.
Yeah. But speaking of whiteness, we're gonna talk about the crimes of white people in this episode because
Yes.
we're we are talking about Avatar: The Way of Water. As always, we will do a couple minutes of non-spoilers, and then we're gonna go full on spoilers.
Hmm.
So if you haven't seen the movie, leave at that point and you can come back later. Nice thing about podcasts is they just sit there until you're ready to come back.
Yeah.
Um, so Avatar: The Way of Water, the sequel to the 2009 blockbuster hit Avatar, still to this day the highest grossing film of all time. Um, and in the sequel, the story picks up, I don't know exactly how long, but it seems like in between 12 and 14 years have
It's been a few
passed
years.
about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and we pick back up with Jake Sully and Natiri, and they have a family now. They have a bunch of kids, and they're like living the good life, on Pandora,
Hmm.
having a great time. But the sky people, humanity, they return and they start wrecking shit, hunting down Jake and his family, and they are forced to leave their home and find refuge with the water tribes called the Metkaina. And yeah, they sort of learn about that culture and everything that goes into that as they learn what's really important in their lives and their world. But once again, directed by James Cameron and written by Cameron, but this time adding Rick Hoffa and Amanda Silver to the writing team. And you may not know this, but they wrote the most recent Planet of the Apes movies, all three of them.
Oh,
And
all three of them. I didn't realize that.
yeah, or they were at least on the writing team of all three. And I think if you've seen those movies, like there will be parallels between these series that we can talk about later on. But Niles, what did you think? Oh wait, we got the cast too. We got to talk about the cast. You want to talk about the cast? I talked a lot. You can talk about the cast.
Oh yeah. I mean, it stars Sam Worthington, Zoe Saldana, Sigourney Weaver, Kate Winslet, Stephen Lang, Cliff Curtis, CCH Pounder, Britton Dalton, Jamie Flatters, Jack Champion, and many, many others. The list goes on.
Yes,
Um,
big
yeah,
cast.
It's a long list. There's plenty of people, and there's some people that surprised me on this list too. Like Edie Falco
Hmm.
shows up. I know her from The Sopranos. I was like, what the hell
Jermaine
is Car?
Clement too.
Yeah, I was like, what's Carmela doing here? What's she doing here? Why is Jermaine Clement here? It just kind of came out of the field. But yeah, it was very stacked cast overall.
Yes. And you may
Yeah,
recognize some of those names from the first movie and be like, how are those people in this movie? They died. We're not going to tell you if for 5 more minutes. Then we'll talk
yeah.
about it.
Give it some time, and then we'll come back to it.
Hmm.
But yeah, Dylan, what are your initial thoughts and reactions to Avatar: The Way of
I
Water?
I think I love this movie. I so for those who don't know, like we both saw the original in theaters as everybody our age did. Uh I think. And my memory of it was like, yeah, I liked it. It was good. Then I didn't
Yeah.
think about it again for a very long time. Until the re-release came out, and I was like, oh, this is better than I remember it being. So that got
Hmm.
me very hyped for this, and this lived up to the hype. I think it takes everything that was good about the first, and the first is a very good movie, and it makes it better. I think
Yeah.
the first movie is it's a very simplistic narrative with stock characters, which is fine. And I do think it's weird that people zero in on Avatar for that criticism when it's like, you know what else was a very basic story with kind of stock characters?
Yeah.
Star Wars.
So many other movies. Like,
Yeah, it's like one of the favorite, most celebrated films of all of geek culture. Star Wars is the same like type of thing, right? And we don't
Mhm.
criticize it for that because it's not really a criticism. But Way of Water, I think, dispenses with that criticism anyway because there's a lot more going on in this movie than in the first one, and I
Yeah.
think that's to its benefit. But what did you think overall?
Yeah, I'm in a very same boat as you. I wouldn't say I loved this film, but I
Mhm.
was definitely left in awe
Okay.
throughout most of it. I'm very positive on it, and I agree. Yeah, the narrative this time is far more complex than the original, and I think, kind of to your point, Dylan, like, you know, everyone will say, we'll bring this up. When you talk about the original, it's just basically Dances with Wolves.
Hmm.
It's just like Kevin Costner, joining the Native American tribe, and you can just very clearly see, this indigenous versus colonialist angle in the first film. It's very much front and center of, like, turning to the other side and kind of like,
Hmm.
supporting the indigenous population rather than
Yeah.
the invading population. And
Hmm.
it's not as much of a featured thing here. It still is a part of the narrative, but it doesn't dominate the story, I would say, this time. And I think that's
Yeah.
kind of like one of the failings of the first one, is that it just kind of beats you over the head with that message of just like, don't you see, Jake's a good guy. Jake's a good guy. He's fighting for the
Yeah.
blue people.
Hmm.
And this story is not as much that. This story, I think, is a lot more focused on family. And there's just a lot of like small little subplots, like you were saying, like,
Hmm.
there's a lot more going on here. And I think, the first 20 minutes, I was a little on the fence, a little bit there
Okay.
with this film. And I think it's mainly because, um, I think you and I talked about it a little bit after we saw the movie together,
Hmm.
because you saw it twice. I only
I've seen
saw
it
this
twice. Yeah, I
in
saw
it
it
once.
in IMAX 3D
Hmm.
with my family, and then you and I saw it in regular 3D. So that
Yeah.
and I will say this, I do not like 3D, and I
Yeah.
don't recommend 3D. This series is an exception to that, I would say. Cameron takes
Yeah.
great care with the tech, and he because a lot of movies are just shot for 2D and then converted to 3D in post, and they look like shit
Hmm.
every single time. They look like shit. These are shot with 3D in mind, um, and I do think that is necessary for the full experience of watching this. There's another
I would
tech
agree.
utilized in this movie that I'm not as positive on. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I do want to ask too, not to you specifically, but the common criticism of Avatar, the first Avatar, is that it's Dances with Wolves in space. And I'm just very curious the percentage of people who make that criticism who have also seen Dances with Wolves.
Yeah.
Because I said that at one point, and I haven't seen Dances with Wolves.
Oh, you haven't?
I haven't. I said that because Red Letter Media told me that in their review from the time.
Yeah.
And I think my perspective on this film has changed a lot since then. And I'm curious how much of my perception of the film was colored by YouTubers that I watched at the time. No shade to Red Letter Media. I think they're great, even though I disagree with them on many things. But their approach to film analysis is pretty good. But
yeah, no, I have seen Dances with Wolves, and it doesn't entirely line up with Dances with Wolves. Obviously, like they're very different films, and Avatar has a lot more action. Dances with Wolves is very much like not action oriented. It's about self-discovery. It's a Bildungsroman, I would argue. But I was gonna say, when we were watching this movie and we like left it, the movie very much expects you to remember what happened in the last Avatar.
absolutely.
And yeah, so that's kind of like where the first 20 minutes threw me a little bit, because it was just like everything just got introduced really quickly, and like it certainly did take some time to like build on the atmosphere. And for like the first, I think, minute of the movie, there's no dialogue. It's just like scenic shots of this landscape and stuff like that to kind of set the tone. And so it does build up. But I think just like at the start, just like boom, 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 boom. They had like 5 kids, and all of a sudden the sky people are back. It's like, okay, cool. We didn't get to really bask in the in the peacefulness for a while there.
Oh yeah, that's true.
But that's fine. And I think it's they made the right decision there, because you don't want to over explain things, especially in a 3-hour movie. And you don't want to repeat the original too much. So I think after those first 20 minutes, I was definitely on board and I was into the narrative. So it was good after that, I think.
Yeah. Well, and that's an interesting point, because I rewatched the first one pretty recently before watching this. You did not, right? So that will be a different experience for people who don't choose to rewatch. I would recommend doing it, just so you don't have that little bumpy start. But but I do think it's interesting because it's been 14 years since the first one came out.
Yeah.
And a lot of directors probably would have been tempted to, do a little like title crawl or recap or something. And it seems like James Cameron was like, fuck you. Remember what I did in my first movie. We're moving on. Thank you very much. It does, like, from interviews of him, it seems that is kind of his attitude. And I gotta respect it. I kind of like it.
Well, he's like an artist where it's like the art is there. I don't need to explain it. Go look at it, and then you can come back and then we can talk about it. It's like, he's kind of one of those guys, I feel like.
And and just with the Dances with Wolves things again, I wanna touch on that just one more time, because we say this all the time. Everybody says it all the time. All art is derivative at this point. There are no new ideas under the sun. It is just weird that the internet geek culture has had this negative fixation on Avatar specifically for these criticisms that you could apply to a lot of the media we watch, especially when it comes from like MCU fans, of which we are some. But it's like, don't criticize Avatar for being the same as something else when you go watch the 28th MCU movie. Like, come on.
I know. Yeah. It's like, it's a double-edged sword. It cuts both ways.
Right. But again, that's not a flaw necessarily. It's about what you do with it. It's like all people have the same set of bones. It's everything else that makes us people, right? Like,
it's the structure that is similar, but what's on top is different. And I'll say too, with this movie, because we were both in like high school when this movie came out.
Middle school, I think.
Middle school, high school, 2009. About middle school, high school. I think freshman year.
I think like eighth grade. Because I just remember the people I saw it with, and they didn't go to my high school, so it was like,
oh, okay, gotcha. But like, I think at the time, I remember after the first movie came out and it was such a hit, they were like, oh, and James Cameron has plans for not 1, but like 2, maybe even 3 extra movies after this. And I just had no interest at the time. I was like, nope, I don't care. Because the story felt complete,
It felt complete to me
Avatar,
too.
Yeah. It's like, it's all tied up with a nice bow, and it's like, okay, you don't need to make a sequel. It's unnecessary. But with how much time has passed, and now having seen the second one, I'm very much interested to see where the next movie goes.
Mhm.
I'm on board now, and I'm like,
Yes.
yes, this needs a threequel now for
Mhm.
sure to
Or
me.
a 5 cool, which is what it's getting.
Well, that I don't know about five quill, but a third movie I will take for sure.
Yeah, I think I didn't even know that he was planning sequels at the time. I just saw the first one. I thought it was a one and done for years, and then when I heard they were making sequels, maybe because my perception had been colored by the internet, or maybe not, because like people people on like my Twitter feed a lot who love Avatar were saying like, oh, this was just made up in the last couple of years. People saying they hate Avatar, blah, blah, blah. Like, no real people think that way. It's like, no, you're wrong. I thought that way in a large part because real people in my life thought that
Hmm.
way. The Dances with Wolves conversation, my 8th grade friends and I were having that in the car on the way to watch Avatar again. So, like, the conversation was happening amongst children in real life at the time.
Hmm.
But we have more to talk about with that. But I do want to say I enjoyed getting to spend a lot of time in a new part of Pandora.
Hmm.
In it really expands the nature of what this moon is, and it makes it feel more full. Like, my assumption as a kid was just, oh, it's a forest moon, like a Star Wars style
Yeah.
planet,
Yeah. Me
where
too.
it's just one biome, but it's not. It's a and Cameron has said that in sequels we will see different Na'vi tribes and different biomes and cultures and stuff like that, and that's really cool. It sets it apart from similar sci-fi and fantasy fare. And I also
Yeah.
enjoyed our whole new cast of protagonists being Jake and Natiri's children. Um, Jake and Natiri are still major players in this movie, but they're not as front and center as they were in the first one. It's a lot more about their kids, which I think was smart. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, it's nice to get introduced to a new cast of characters, and these all these characters they had their time in the spotlight, or at least a few of them. I don't know if all of them got like an equal share, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
but it was nice to kind of get that shift. And I do have to say, kind of what we've been saying with Pandora and how expansive this planet is.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I got to give mad respect to James Cameron
Yeah.
for these films, because like that's this guy. I think I read somewhere they spent like he just spent so much time, I think over a decade, developing the mythology, the
Mm-hmm.
culture, the language of these people,
Yeah.
really just rounding out and world building. It's kind of like it feels Tolkien-esque with the
Mm-hmm.
Silmarillion, however pronounce it.
Silmarillion.
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 Thank you. I'm terrible at pronunciation somehow. But that kind of level of dedication is just absurd. So
Mm-hmm.
kudos,
Yeah.
Mr. Cameron.
And like, if this didn't work, it's very damaging to a career to have spent a
Hmm.
decade writing 4 scripts that don't pan out or don't do well financially. So it's like adding on to the respect. It's like, even though he is James Cameron, who made Aliens and Terminator
Hmm.
2 and The Abyss and Titanic, it's like, even if you're James Cameron, that is still a massive gamble, and it has
Yes.
paid off, luckily.
Oh,
But
that's just making me think of like George Lucas writing the prequels and being like, "Well, I'll write in a bunch of Jar Jars, and it's just going to be Jar Jar all day, a whole
yeah.
race of Jar Jars. That's going to be the second movie. We're going to go there, and
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah,
all
but
that."
I guess like there maybe is a little bit of a parallel to Lucas coming back for the prequels, even though he didn't write them all in advance. He wrote them as he went on and was notoriously like not done until the last minute for any of them. But
Hmm.
like, he retired from filmmaking for a long time to raise his kids, and then returned with the prequels, and then that was kind of the end of George Lucas films. So these are like opposite results, sort of.
Hmm.
But yeah, and just like the first one, this movie's very atmospheric. The visual effects are stunning, and really make this world feel alive and lived in, to a degree that CGI is not normally given the opportunity to do in films, usually because it's
Hmm.
rushed. But yeah.
Yeah, for sure. It's an interesting film, and this is just had to get a chord there.
Oh.
This is I was reading this interesting Vox article on it
Mm-hmm.
too, and their take was really they're really focusing on the blockbuster aspect of this film too. And I think it was an interesting article. I encourage people to kind of go seek it out because
Mm-hmm.
there's some interesting notes in there about blockbuster culture and kind of like what we're expecting of these kinds of films.
Yeah.
And I agreed with a lot of what they had to say too, because I think we are very used to a type of blockbuster format these days. And I mean, you know, in every blockbuster, you'll see very similar tropes
Mm-hmm.
and formulas and structure. But you know, Marvel, I feel like it's just so it's all about quick action. It's all about these fast quips. It's like very da 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 da
Yeah.
da. Like we
The
gotta go on to the
Joss,
next
the
thing.
Whedonisms really wormed their way into Marvel in the Avengers,
Yes,
and it
they did.
never left.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just kind of interesting to think about like what you should get out of a blockbuster. And these are movies, obviously, that are designed to make an absurd amount of money, as much money as possible. That's why they call them
Mhm.
blockbusters. They're just trying to make money. So, you know, it's just kind of interesting to think about, especially in this day and age of streaming, where
Mhm.
everything's like so quick to like on demand and like, you know, I feel like the blockbuster kind of got killed a little bit with the pandemic, but you know, it's definitely resurging now. And
Yeah.
the article with Vox, I remember what they said was mainly that like a blockbuster should really leave you feeling like you're in awe, like you're
Mhm.
just like stunned by it, like what you're seeing on the screen. And this is definitely one of those movies that lives up to that expectation.
Yeah, I agree, and you said here that like blockbusters should aspire to be like this, and I agree. And I think even though both of us are huge fans of the Marvel series, a lot of their entries do not live up to that, and they have become
Mm-hmm.
the standard regardless of that. So and that is due to their frequency and their prevalence,
Yeah.
and the fact that they make lots of money. So I never blame Marvel movies specifically for Hollywood being in the state that it is. It's just because Hollywood has been trying to find a MCU for a long time, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're like they will run any franchise into the ground to make money. It just so happened that the MCU, in part due to its quality and its
Yeah.
characters and its casting, like a lot of people are willing to forgive the weaker elements of those films. So they have been able to make like 30 of them, even though not all of them I would say are like A+ movies, right? So, but I would say like from the Marvel front, like Endgame, that's a blockbuster that lives up to the blockbuster hype, right? But
Oh yes.
this year we've gotten like really earnest blockbusters too, like Top Gun Maverick. This I think there is a
Mm-hmm.
craving amongst audiences for a return to this type of thing, like because the MCU is almost too self-aware at this point in a lot of ways. You know, like the quips
Mm-hmm.
and the commenting on how ridiculous things are. It's like maybe don't do that as much. You can just like wear your heart on your sleeve. Yes, you will be cringe, you will be goofy. That is okay. This movie is goofy as shit. This
Yeah.
franchise is about 10-foot tall, spindly blue people who run around in the trees. It's ridiculous, but it is so earnest that it works, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if it had like that quippy, self-aware humor, this would not work, I don't think.
Yeah, I agree. Like if they were all just commenting on how absurd it is and they're just cracking jokes every 10 minutes for
Mm-hmm.
comedic relief, it's like, no, we don't need that. Like I think there's probably like 5 jokes throughout this entire
Mm-hmm.
movie, and I think that's perfect because that's
Yeah.
all we need for this kind of narrative, especially when it's like about a family. And I think all the jokes were like family, like
Mm-hmm.
between the each other, just like brother teasing brother kind of stuff. Um, and it is such a, you know, you got this note here about cultural impact. And
Yeah,
I
I
think
want to talk
it,
about that.
yeah, it is something worth talking about because this movie, the first one, obviously had a very profound cultural impact. But I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, so that was the big like argument against Avatar for such a long
Mm-hmm.
time. And I've made it, I will say, erringly in the past. But like the idea that Avatar, well, I had a different take on it that I'll elaborate on in a second.
Oh,
But like
sure.
people would say like it's so weird that Avatar was this huge thing, but it left no cultural impact whatsoever, and nobody talks about it, and it's just a
Oh,
nothing movie. And my I said the same type of thing, but my thought was more like it's kind of weird and cool that this non-IP related thing just dropped on everyone's radar in 2009, made a shit zillion dollars, was the biggest thing in the world for like a year, and then it just disappeared. Um,
mm-hmm.
because I'm sorry. I know a lot of film Twitter doesn't want to hear this, but the normies were not talking about Avatar in between Avatar and the release of the new one. They just were
Oh
not
yeah.
doing it. However, that movie made $2.9 billion. It obviously had a big cultural impact, right? And this movie is well on its way to 2 billion already. I am predicting at this point, if it stays in theaters long enough, it is going to surpass the first one. I think that's going to happen. So obviously, it did have a cultural impact because people like shit themselves at this new one, right? So I wanted to, and I'm just discounting the people who like hate Avatar, and say it had no cultural impact because they hate it. I don't think they're very interesting to talk about in this context. But I want to use this as an opportunity to like examine what we mean by cultural impact, because
Okay.
the movie made a ton of money. Everybody liked it. Everybody at least enjoyed it, right?
Yes.
Most people were positive on it. And then now the new one, even though people weren't talking about it all the time, is very much enjoyed by people and making a ton of money. So my theory is that what has cultural impact and what doesn't is entirely tied to like availability and presence in like the age you're in. Because
Hmm.
think about in between the Star Wars prequels and Disney buying Lucasfilm. Were people talking about Star Wars all that much? Not really.
I
I
guess not. Yeah.
I think it's the same thing. I think because Iron Man came out in 2008. This came out in 2009. So there was a shift in the blockbuster culture, and I think we all got used to a franchise just being ever present and always being in the conversation when that is kind of unnatural. That's not the norm. So I think for a lot of people, the idea of no cultural impact was just colored by the fact that the MCU has been so present for so long that it's always in the top of the conversation. And things like Game of Thrones were kind of like that too, you know, but like there things that were constantly going were constantly talked about because of course
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Sure.
And also this movie came out before like the peak geek culture of the internet started, you know, or really became what it was. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
that really started taking off in like 2011, 2012, and it went for about 5 or 6 years, and then it settled back into something new. But I think that is why it quote unquote didn't have cultural impact, because it obviously did in the real world. I got to my IMAX screening with my family half an hour before the theater doors opened, and there was 100-person line to get in to get seated.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
So
insane.
the thing was huge. And this included people who missed the first one initially, but watched it in prep. Like insane. People knew this was big. So I just want to talk about that a little bit. I think it's important to look at that.
Oh, it absolutely is. And I mean, that's very it's kind of relevant to something else that I wanted to talk about too, which you could kind of transition here too, because I agree it did have a cultural impact. And I think a good kind of case study of that positive cultural impact too. If you guys are interested, it's actually a very interesting episode of How To with John Wilson. It's this
Okay.
HBO series. It's just a really funny series in general. He's got these random ass episodes of just like how to scaffolding, and he goes around New York and just like films scaffolding and talks to people about it, and it's really a fucking absurd.
Yeah.
Very funny. But there's this in the second season, episode 5, he's got this episode called How to Remember Your Dreams. And if I remember right, there's a lot of like stuff in there about like the Mandela effect, but that could be a different episode. But there was in this one specifically, you never know where he's going to go with these episodes too. He takes them in these very absurd directions sometimes. Okay. And this episode, he actually, John Wilson, the creator, he interacted with an Avatar fan club or support group in New York City. And it's fascinating because these people, I think it's called the Kelutral community. Look them up online.
Okay.
But the group members, you know, they come from kind of all over the place. Some of them are in New York, some of them were out of state and stuff like that. But they were just like group members who felt very deeply connected to these Avatar characters and to just the world of Pandora in general. Like the original film just resonated really strongly with them. And, you know, I think these people were able to escape reality and find some solace, some support in their own personal situations
Mhm.
through this escape to Pandora, this other world. And I think some of them personally connected with the characters like Jake and Natiri. So, there's some stuff like that. But these interactions just felt like really true and endearing and meaningful to me. And I just kind of wanted to bring that up here too, because I
Cool.
think it illustrates the positive impact that the Avatar franchise has had on people. Because I'm kind of like you, Dylan. I wasn't obsessed with this film when it came
Mhm.
out, but like I watched it multiple times because it was
Right. Everybody
fascinating.
did. Like, people who
Mhm.
are too young to remember, like, everyone saw this movie like 6 times. It was insane. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't even seek out seeing it multiple times. I was just invited to see it by multiple different people, so I kept going. Like, everyone was going kickflip bananas for this thing. It was insane.
Yeah, right. It was such like it was a moment in
Mhm.
pop culture that I think, you just kind of had to be there for it.
Yeah, yeah.
And like the cool thing about that Avatar support group that I was mentioning too is that like you can even like through that group learn the Navi language and learn even more about Pandora. You can form these new friendships with others in the group. It's just amazing to me that
Mhm.
these people can have just like these positive relationships, learn these new skills and all this stuff just because of a film. It's inspiring to me. So,
Yeah.
I loved that, and I would also encourage you guys to watch How to with John Wilson. It's
Mhm.
a phenomenal show.
Yeah, but final note before we go into spoilers, I just want to say, like, I fully recommend this. And I would recommend rewatching the first one before you go see it. Who knows? You may like it more than you remember. I did.
Hmm.
So, I a
Yeah,
good recommendation for both of them from me.
yeah, yeah. I'd recommend it too. I think going into this, I was also concerned that I was going to get a headache from the
From
3D,
the 3D.
or yeah, but I did not. So if I didn't get one, I don't think you guys will. So
Yeah.
it was a fun experience all around. But yeah, let's dive into spoilers.
Spoiler time. So, early spoiler for the movie. We have the return, the resurrection of Colonel Quaritch from the first movie, played by Stephen Lang. And I didn't even know his name in the first movie, honestly. I missed
I
it
know.
somehow. But yeah, he and a bunch of the other like Marines are resurrected in Avatar bodies, or as Navi, like full on Navi, I guess, made through Avatar tech. Um, which I think is very interesting. What did you think about the return of these villainous folk?
I also think it is an interesting idea, and I think it really works well for this narrative because you do have this predicament here. If you're
Hmm.
going to do a sequel, you need an antagonist in the film, or else it's not going to have any plot.
Right.
It's just going to be Jake and his family fucking around in the forest. So what do? You got to bring a villain into the picture.
Hmm.
So you have a choice between resurrecting the old one or building up an entirely new one and
Yeah.
developing that villain a little bit. And I think the decision that they made of resurrecting the villain was a smart idea because it saves time. It
Hmm.
provides perfect motivation for the antagonist too. It's
Yeah.
kind of like a
Revenge.
revenge angle
Hmm.
in a way. He's like, what's
Yes.
better than killing your killer? Like, what's a better motivation than that?
Yeah.
And we already know him. They have a history already. Like,
Hmm.
it's kind of the right direction, I think, to take things. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. And I really love how he was brought back specifically as well, because if they
Yes.
had just resurrected him as is, I would have been less interested. But now he's a Navi. He has the memories and personality of Quaritch, but he's not exactly the same. There are
Hmm.
some nuanced differences between the two. And also, yeah, the addition of Spider as being his son, which is an addition that we didn't know about in the
Yes.
first movie. Maybe it's in the extended cut, which I just found out is a thing that exists. Um, but I think all of these guys, but specifically Quaritch being Navi now and kind of doing a lot of the things that Navi do, like their rituals and stuff like that. It's got to make them like have a little bit more empathy for the native population over time. Clearly, they don't have it yet because they do a lot of really messed up shit. But I could see Quaritch going down a different path ultimately because
Mhm.
of this. And we do see some more kindness out of him. Like in the first movie, he's like standing in the ship as they're blowing up the tree. It's like, let's wipe out this indigenous population before dinner. I'm hungry. Like,
Yeah, he's
yeah,
sipping his
he's sipping
coffee.
his coffee while they're like blowing up this beautiful, majestic tree that is this people's entire home.
Yeah.
So he does fucked up shit like that too, but he has more ironically human qualities that are uh he stays his hand a little bit in this one where he might not have in the first one.
I think so, and I think that it does have something to do with Spider being there
Hmm.
too. Because yeah, there is a moment there where they're searching for Jake's and his family, and they're going to the different fishing tribe villages and stuff, and he could just kill everyone, and he's very tempted to, I think, to just kill the entire population.
Yeah.
He's just like, we'll send him a message, but he's like, he shows some restraint, and I think it is partly his tactician brain of being like,
Hmm.
no, let's draw him out,
Yeah.
obviously for the plot, but
Hmm.
I think it is because Spider is also there and trying to talk him down a little bit
Hmm.
of like, no, you don't need to kill them, like that's gratuitous and it's stupid, it's not going to get you closer to your goal. So I think, but yeah, it does kind of restore a little bit of humanity to him, because yeah, Spider in my head, that's his one like real connection to
Yeah.
humanity
It's
besides
like
just
it's
his
like a
memories.
tether. It's his tether. But he
Mhm.
also has a parallel to his speech from the first movie where he says you're not in Kansas anymore, and he's talking to his Marines again. And
I like
I
that.
I do like how he views them being brought back as Navi as like a punishment for their sins in their past life, I think is what he says.
Yeah, I love that too. When we were talking to earlier about like how fast the pacing was, his introduction to the story provides some summaries, so like a
Mhm.
recap. It's like, oh, this is how he died. Remember, it was at this place
Yeah.
during this battle, and like, oh, and I completely forgot, that Natiri was involved in him dying. So that was a
Hmm.
nice element to add in there as well. So that was kind of, I think, our recap in a
Yeah.
way.
And his waking up in his new body very much mirrors Jake's scene when he first
Yes,
enters the Avatar's body. It's a very similar type of thing.
I love that.
So Cameron is very clearly drawing parallels between these two characters. And I saw it said in a tweet somewhere that like Cosmonaut Marcus said that Jake Sully is an anime protagonist. He's like, look, he's a good character. He's an anime protagonist. He says things like, I gotta take shit to the next level. That's just the type of character he
Yeah.
is. But I saw a different tweet from someone else saying that Quaritch and Jake Sully have an anime rivalry, which means they will either become friends or they will have a rivalry that destroys entire planets. And it's like, yeah, that seems about right for what we're getting at.
That's where it's on so far. The
And
trajectory's there. Yeah.
and James Cameron is a weeb. He is an anime fan. We know this. So like there are definitely anime influences on the Avatar franchise.
Yeah, I see it for sure.
Mhm.
But yeah, I really like Quaritch in this film too, and especially with Spider. Like
Mhm.
when Spider was introduced, I was like, "What the fuck is this?" Like it was very quick, and I was like, "Okay, I guess it's fine to have one human there,
Mhm.
um, just for diversity or whatever." But not really. But like having that character in the narrative, I thought
Mhm.
you know, added some nice complexity, especially at the end when Spider has that decision to save Quaritch. He kind of
Mhm.
struggles with that underwater for a second there
Yeah.
after the final battle. We're really in spoiler territory for sure. But and he saves him, pulls him out of the water, but then he
Mhm.
decides to go back with his family instead of Quaritch. It's like it
Yeah.
does increase some depth and complexity for both of those characters. So
It
it'll be
does.
interesting. And I agree with your assessment there too. I think on the trajectory that he's got right now, I think his character is going to continue to evolve and eventually embrace Pandora. That's my
Mhm.
prediction. It's
Yeah.
very optimistic, but maybe it is that anime Dragon Ball Z, we're going to destroy the whole planet kind of deal.
It could be
Climactic
either.
battle.
We'll have to wait and see. But on the note of Spider, interesting character. I liked him for the most part. He annoyed me a lot in the middle sections of the film though, because
Oh,
like when he does save that village from getting killed, great
mhm.
job. But I'm like, what did you expect to happen here, dude? You know, like he seems, and I understand he's a prisoner and he's under duress, and that's really his only option. But like, he seemed so shocked and surprised, and I'm like, you should have known. You should have known that this is what was going to go down. And it just kind of, maybe he was just naive because he was around good people, but like he's been in a war for a year already, so I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I thought that was a little silly too. But I think on the one hand, you do, or I guess what I'm trying to say is more of like generations.
Mhm.
Everything's going to be different from one generation to the next, and
Yeah,
since hasn't really experienced war, full blown war. I mean, they've been
hmm,
having those battles for about a year, but he hasn't experienced full blown war with the Sky People.
yeah.
I think his expectations are not where they should be for sure.
Maybe, and I guess he doesn't go into combat in the insurgency stuff either.
Yeah.
Um, but I want to talk about the opening sequences a little bit, the
Yes.
opening acts, because you were kind of thrown by the first 20 minutes. I love the first 20 minutes, because we get that sick train heist scene, which is such a great opening action beat
Hmm.
after, well, first we get the Sky People returning and just obliterating the forest, like to a degree far greater than what happens in the first movie. So basically telling you that humanity is back and they're here for blood was how I kind of took that. Like they are
Oh yes,
intentionally destroying the planet out of spite. Um,
it
and
felt like that. Yeah.
but I think it does. I think the train heist scene does a really good job of establishing the dynamic between Jake and Natiri's sons, Loak and Nataeum. Loak is the younger one who does a lot of dumb shit. He's basically the new Jake Sully because Jake Sully isn't quite as dumb as he used to be. And then Nataeum covers up for him and takes all the heat. Jake knows this and kind of plays along anyway, it seems like.
Hmm.
Um, but this first, like, it's almost like a prologue. It gives us, I think, a lot of nostalgia from the first film because it's similar to how the first film ends, right? You know, like a big battle in the forest where they're fighting against a human piece of machinery. Um, and then, right, and it does all that before we move on to a new setting and begin another batch of world building. And we also, get the reintroduction to humanity and Quaritch and all that stuff.
Hmm.
I think it works really well.
Yeah.
And I didn't know this until after I saw it, but apparently James Cameron wrote a screenplay for Avatar 1.5 and gave it to the cast. And Sam Worthington was like, "This is awesome. When are we shooting this?" And he's like, No. That's just for you guys to have some backstory. Like, just read it and learn it." But
Oh, that's cool.
he apparently wrote a whole fucking feature film that he's not making just so the characters can know what they've been doing in the interim. That's so cool.
How considerate of
Yeah.
him. I love that though. That's such a good
That's
idea.
awesome. It just shows how much he really does care about this franchise and this world that he's
Yeah,
created.
he's
So.
very dedicated to it. But yeah, that train heist scene, one of my favorite sequences of the film as well. I thought that was excellent, and yeah, I love
Mhm.
the whole um Quaritch's like awakening on the vessel in
Mhm.
space. I thought that was really neat.
Yes,
Especially since like in the original we didn't get a ton of shots in space. It was just like,
it's just the beginning, like the
yeah, it's
opening
just the
shot.
beginning, and that's exactly what we got this time too. So nice parallel there.
Mhm.
And I think one of my other favorite sequences too, we'll talk about it, I'm sure, later too, but is the whole like um first sequence with the Tolkien, the whale,
Tolkien, yeah.
the giant Tolkien. Yeah, I
Mhm.
thought that whole thing with Loak and
Oh yeah,
the whale was just such a phenomenal sequence. Like
Paya
it's just so
Khan
cool.
was his name. Yeah,
Aya Khan.
Paya Khan, the outcast. Yeah, no, that scene was the tension of it was amazing, and
Hmm.
just the way the action is shot in this movie, everything is so clearly laid out. You know where everybody is at all times. You can see very clearly. Um, it's something that shouldn't be said, but it's something we really can't take for granted anymore in a lot of action movies because a lot of
Hmm.
action is not very well shot. So,
Yeah,
but
that's true.
yeah, I also enjoyed how Jake takes a little bit more of a backseat in this movie. I think he's a great character, but I
Hmm.
liked I liked that this movie focused a lot more on his kids. Um,
Yes,
because I do think Jake will be a presence for most or all the series, but I do think the protagonist mantle is going to shift over to the younger generation. And I think they did a good job of laying the groundwork for that in this movie.
I agree. Yeah, I do appreciate the new cast of characters that we got too. Loek, Nateum, Kiri, Spider are all great. I think the youngest daughter, I can't even remember
Hook,
her name. Hook?
Hook,
Who, yeah, I think
Took.
she needed more screen time because I couldn't
She's
remember her
so
fucking name.
funny.
I couldn't remember her fucking name. But but I think they're all so interesting and they're all very like they've got their own personalities. But I agree, Jake's taken a more like a wise sage role, but he's
Mm-hmm.
still very active. Um, and I think Natiri, she's still that same passionate character that we knew
Uh-huh.
from the first movie. But I think, yeah, she maybe could have had a little bit more to do in this
Yes.
film.
She was a little
Um,
underserved here. I'll agree with you on that.
yeah, but otherwise, I think yeah, our family. This movie is very much about family. Like I think the first one, it's very clear. Like he's switching sides and he's choosing
Mm-hmm.
his own life. This one's about that life that he made with his
Exactly.
family and protecting it as much as he can.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
And
I appreciate all of them and they're so well defined. I think yeah, Kiri's one of my favorites out of the
me
group for
too.
sure.
Yeah. I really liked her. And just one more thing on Jake. Like he's a much wiser character, but he still has the same traits that we remember. Like
Yes.
I love when after his sons fight the chieftain's sons, he's like, you can't do this. And then at the end he's like, how'd the other guys look? He's like, worse.
Yeah.
A lot worse. It's like good.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
that. I like that, like that's the type of dad he is. Like he's very strict and militaristic inappropriately. It seems like he gets called out by Natiri at the front of the film, which I like, where she says like this is a family, it's not a squad.
Hmm.
And I do think it's an interesting character trait that he was kind of blurring those lines, leading this insurgency, and that might actually be part of the reason why he chose to have them step away and go somewhere else, maybe because he was losing sight of what was important. It wasn't really stated in the film that that's the case, but I could see that from his character's point of view.
Hmm.
But he's also like still kind of a goofball, and he has a lot of the big action beats at the end. Like the final act is very Jake Sully focused, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But let's see what else we got going on
Well,
here.
and I liked the new tribe that we met too, the Water
Yes,
Clan
the
people, the
Metcaine.
Metakain. Yeah, they're very interesting, and I think, yeah, I liked the chief. And yeah, like I remember at the end of the film too, I was like, turned to you, I was like, Kate Winslet was in that, right? Who was she? Like I just couldn't put it together in my head. Who is who sometimes.
That's the
But
thing about all these people being mocap. Sometimes you forget.
yeah, right. But I thought, yeah, Cliff Curtis and Kate Winslet did
Hmm.
good jobs in their roles as the leaders, and I appreciated, the introduction to the youth of the Water Clan too, and kind of
Yeah.
the those like teen boys and kind of the interaction that they had with the
Hmm.
Sully clan was very
Yeah.
interesting too.
And I like the evolution of the relationship between the oldest son of the chief and Loak, because they have that rivalry for a little while, and Loak, like, was he trying to get him killed? I maybe, but he
Maybe.
survives, and then ultimately like he covers for him, and then they like become friendly after that. And then you got the
Hmm.
romance between Loak and the chief's daughter, which Loak is new Jake Sully, so he's falling in love with the new chief's daughter. Makes sense. And that
Yes,
relationship I think
parallel.
works really well also. Um, but I just love the whole Sully clan, and I like how they have their little family rituals. They always say like Sully stick together, like it's like a corny parent thing that they're doing, making
Hmm.
their kids all get in a circle and say the thing together.
Well, and I appreciated that, like, when I grew up, I had to move,
Hmm.
at least once in my life. And I know other people have probably moved more than that when they were growing up. Like, so I know some kids, they moved like 10 times growing up, because like
Yeah.
they were just always moving. And there is kind of like, I think that endearing moment in the film where they get to the new place and they all circle up in their new home and they're like, I know this is a lot of change.
Yeah.
We're gonna get through this as a family together. Like
Mhm.
he's like very kind of supportive of it, and you can see the kids are really upset about it. It's like it felt very real to me there of like,
Yeah.
oh, they're moving and it's a new place, and you got to make new friends.
And I will say one sad thing about their move is so when they're all flying away into the ocean for the first time, and I believe I'm getting it right, but it's
Hmm.
Nataeum is the one who looks back at the forest, and he's the only one who's never gonna get to see it again.
Oh yeah,
So
that's a little
it's a
sad.
little, and I remember when I was watching it for the first time, he turned around and looked at the forest, and I just clocked it right then. And like, he's never seen these trees again. He's toast.
Yeah, we have talked a lot about some great things in this movie.
Hmm.
You know, you love it. I don't think it's necessarily perfect, and it is just because of like small little nitpicky things. Because a
There
lot
are
of this movie, I
yeah.
think, is like terrific. It's outstanding. Like the character
Hmm.
development, the visuals. We didn't even really talk about the visuals, but the visuals are outstanding. The action is
Yeah.
excellent. The narrative is excellent. Like it's all
Hmm.
great. But I think if you really wanted to get granular and find things to complain about, you can. Uh, and I think the formulaic moments like what you just described there, um, and again, some of these moments aren't always hindrances or bad things, but there
Hmm.
are like formulaic moments where it's like that could have been a little smoother. Like,
Okay.
I think early on too, I could predict the older son was going to die. I don't know when I predicted that, but I was like,
Hmm.
someone's going to die, and it's going to be the older son.
It's gonna be the older son, and it's gonna be the fault of the younger son. I think
Yeah.
that, but yeah, but like you said, it's not always a hindrance. I think sometimes things like that are put in for you to feel it coming.
Oh yeah.
Like not everything is meant to be a twist. Sometimes you're meant to see. I mean, shit. I'll talk about Titanic.
Yeah.
Like, we go watch Titanic. We know they're going to hit the fucking iceberg, right?
Yeah.
Like, the
It's not a
whole movie,
surprise.
the whole movie is building up to that iceberg. So I think maybe some of these things are kind of like that, where you are
Oh
meant
sure.
to, you're meant to understand, oh no, this is definitely going to happen. Like, this isn't going to go well for someone. Um,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there are some formulaic things in it, and you have your note where it's like it is kind of weird that they're always saying "cuz" and "bro." Um, I chalk that
Yes.
up to like Jake Sully probably has that in his vocabulary a lot.
It's fine. Yeah. Sometimes the dialogue just kind of took me out of it, but it was like, why do these people know what cuz is and bro and all that stuff? But it's
But
fine. I don't really care.
you have to remember too, though, that they are speaking in Navi.
Yeah,
The
they
film is
yeah.
just in English because at the start, remember, we get a lot of subtitles, and then Jake is talking. It's like picked up the language after a little while, and then we shift away from the subtitles to English, and we're just meant to
Yeah.
understand. Um,
And that's totally fine. That works
mhm,
totally. Cuz yeah, these are just small little logistical critiques like
yeah.
going back to the formulaic stuff. It's like, it's kind of like what you were saying. They put these stuff in to kind of set some stuff up later, like the trick that the Metakayan boys play on Loak that basically almost gets him killed.
Hmm.
But then that turns into a great plot point, and then it's a great it's the foundation of their friendship. But like you can kind of
Hmm.
peg that from a mile away. They're fucking with him,
Oh
or
yeah.
even like the montage of the training moments underwater. It's like we know it's coming, it's going to be there, and it's beautiful and awesome. Or even like the
Mhm.
climactic battle at the end with the same antagonist and the same protagonist. It's like, you know, yeah, it's fine, it's whatever. One thing that I
Speaking. Oh yeah, go for it.
yeah, I was just gonna say, one thing that I didn't notice in the theater, but then like once I was reading a review after, I was like, oh yeah, the water Navi people, they just bail like
They do.
halfway
They,
through the
they
battle.
yes. They do disappear for a lot of that last act, and I understand why, right? Like, from a and this is where I think the way you and I watch movies differs from the way a lot of other like YouTube centric critics watch.
Hmm.
But like, from a literal mechanics of the plot perspective, that is stupid. It's straight up dumb and it doesn't make sense. But I think most people who like love film and aren't just like trying to cinema sins things understand that the sequence is about the Sullys. We are focusing in on the Sullys.
Yes.
You're
Yes.
not meant to really think about the fact that the water tribe is not there. They aren't there, and it's weird. But this is about Jake and Natiri dealing with the loss of their son and what they do next. and
Yes.
having Cliff Curtis and Kate Winslet show up would muddy the waters of that, you know.
Yeah.
So,
and it's totally fine. Yeah, it's not a problem at all. And even like, you know, because we're getting nitpicky here, like I kept thinking about this, like even during that opening sequence where the humans are landing on Pandora, it's like there is so much manpower, energy, and money, and time and resources put into this Pandora venture. And Evie Falco's character even says, like, the Earth is dying. It's like you think 3 steps beyond the narrative, and you ask the question: wouldn't it have just been easier to devote all those resources and the energy and the manpower to actually solving the problems on Earth? I think that says a lot about our culture right now. Of course,
because we are in the same situation.
Exactly.
And instead of spending all of the tons of money and resources we have right now on saving ourselves from the heat death of our planet, we are blowing each other up for money, basically. Why are most wars fought? It's money and oil. Why are they fought for oil? Because oil makes money. That's it. That's the only reason.
Yeah, it's whatever, because it works for the plot, you know, and it's just like, God damn it. But
there's the military industrial complex in America and in the West. The military industrial complex, to maintain profitability, needs a forever war. That is why America is always at war. We don't give a shit about any of the things we're fighting in. It is to feed the military industrial complex. Please stop.
Well, welcome to Play Pause Rewind, the show where every week we talk about how terrible our society is.
It's important. Yeah, you see, we'll lure you in with talk of blue people, and then we'll hit you with the right hook of critiquing the military industrial complex.
Social justice. Here it comes. And then like one thing we already kind of touched on too was like, you know, Quaritch and his Marines, they basically embraced the culture.
A little bit, yeah.
With you know, connecting with the animals and flying them around and stuff. And they never really kind of stopped to be like, oh, is this the culture? Am I changing? Am I switching sides yet?
Yeah.
Like, you know.
But I do love that Quaritch is kind of in like a one-sided dick measuring contest with Jake Sully, because he's about to trank the like Banshee thing to bond with it, and then Spider laughs at him. He's like, Jake Sully did it the hard way. He's like, all right, I'm gonna do it the hard way.
He's like, all right, I guess I got to.
Which is why they're gonna be friends. They're gonna be friends. I have a critique of the movie, not plot related or anything like that. I will say though, like we were alluding to with the wasted resources on taking over Pandora, I think that is the point, right? I think the point is that, and in the first movie, Jake Sully even straight up says to Awa, the goddess, like, look into Grace's memories. We killed our mother. There is no green on Earth. Like, it seems like for Earth, it is maybe too late because humanity's destroyed it.
Yeah, it seems that way.
But my only real nitpick is the high frame rate shit. I am not sold on this. I don't know, especially because it varied from shot to shot, what was high frame rate and what wasn't. And I don't know which versions of the shots bothered me, but there were several shots where it looked like it was stuttery and it looked bad. And I don't understand why 24 frames per second isn't good enough. I don't know why Cameron is pushing for 48 frames a second. Maybe it did look better, but I think just pick one and do the whole movie in that one, because the cutting back and forth was very jarring to me. I don't know if you noticed it or not, but there were some shots that were ruined by the change in frame rate. So
I didn't really notice that too much, but yeah.
And for those of you who don't know about this, film, at least back in the day, like a lot of digital stuff is different, but like film is not a moving image, right? It is a series of still pictures crossed in front of the projector, and the projector goes out, and that creates the illusion of movement, right? And film traditionally has been 24 of those frames per second. Peter Jackson on the first Hobbit tried to do 48 frames a second. It was pretty universally panned. This is all digital stuff, so I can understand how that might work better here because you're not seeing like makeup and wig seams like you would in The Hobbit.
Oh yeah.
But and video games, like the standard is either 30 frames a second or 60 frames a second. So I understand in that sense, maybe if it's all digital, you want a higher frame rate, but I don't know. I don't care about that. And I think
Yeah.
just pick one. Just pick one or the other.
Yeah.
I don't care
That's
which one
fine.
you pick, just pick one.
Well, yeah, and I
um
mean, speaking of the visuals,
mhm.
we didn't even really talk about them, but yeah, I think the
Shockingly, we didn't talk about him yet.
yeah, like I think this is like such a big draw. I think for at least some people,
hmm
they're coming to see some of the CGI because it's just amazing. And I mean, you saw the original more recently than I have,
hmm
and you said that the visuals hold up pretty well.
I think
Uh,
they do it to a shocking degree. Like the characters and the emotions are all very good. The environments look spectacular. I think if you like Way of Water, I'm sure looks better if you put them
oh yeah,
side by side, right? But the especially considering this was all CGI stuff in 2009, that first movie holds up tremendously. I would say Way of Water is flawless
mm,
visually,
okay,
and the water work, the way they like actually filmed in underwater tanks to make sure they got it right. Uh, like goddamn, good job.
yeah, it's
You got it
smart.
right. Like the water, the scenes underwater are so fucking beautiful. It's insane. Like the water is so clear and light blue,
Yeah.
and it's just wildly pretty.
I thought the underwater stuff in Black Panther looked good, but this
Next
blows
level.
that shit out of the water,
Yeah,
honestly. Like
and
that
like yeah, and better than Aquaman too. Like they're
oh
better
yeah.
than both of them. Another thing too, I love the eclipse. The eclipse that keeps happening throughout the
Mhm.
movie. It makes sense because they're on a moon orbiting a planet that they would be dealing with eclipse sometimes. But it's not really part of the first movie, and it is a big part of this. Like it comes at very significant points in the narrative, and I think it made for some great stuff. You know.
I thought so too. Yeah, it was a very interesting thing to put in there. So yeah, I like those shots too. And yeah, the sound design underwater was just phenomenal too.
hmm
Like, you know, when you're underwater, it has this very specific sound. They were able to capture that, I think. And yeah, that was so like, Spider even, just a
hmm
lone human in some of these shots,
Yeah.
and he's just surrounded by these fully CGI people, and it looks fine. It
It
looks good.
looks,
Like,
yeah, it looks great. He's seamlessly integrated into every scene he's in, which is, from what I understand, incredibly hard to do.
mhm.
Like it's like you can make computer animated stuff look very good on its own, even if it's lesser looking than it could be. But as soon as you put it next to a real thing, you start noticing the wonkiness. But not here.
Yeah, I thought he looked great beside all those people. So yeah, it was very
Yeah.
interesting.
Do you want to talk about the controversy section you put in here a little bit, real
Yeah,
quick?
yeah. I mean, it's not even like multiple. It's like I think I've only seen. I always just Google controversies
Mm-hmm.
blank movie name, just to see what pops up whenever we're preparing for these, just to see if there's anything. And the only thing that I really saw was just film. Like there was some calls for people to boycott the film. This mainly
Mm-hmm.
came from native and indigenous groups around the world.
Okay, so it
And
did actually come from indigenous populations. It wasn't just people speaking on their behalf.
yes, yeah,
Okay,
it was
that's good to know.
at least like groups, not
Mm-hmm.
like I can't name names right now because I
Okay.
can't remember right now. But the main argument I think really came back from this comment that Cameron made back in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
That was interpreted kind of as racist, where he was, I can't remember the entire quote, but basically to summarize. What he kind of said was just that the Sioux should have fought a lot harder if they could have. They would have fought a lot harder if they could have seen their futures.
Uh-huh.
Um, which is kind of an ignorant thing to say. And I think some of the other calls to boycott it, are mainly just cultural appropriation calls
Mm-hmm.
of like, this is just blueface, this is just smears on some blueface, and it's just kind of echoing the sentiments from the 2009 2010 era.
Yeah,
So he
because
hasn't really,
that was
yeah,
happening then too. I don't
yeah,
feel comfortable making a qualitative statement on any of this.
Me neither. Me neither.
I do know that Cameron has like worked with native groups on activism and protecting their land and actually, you know, doing like walking the walk and not just talking the talk about a lot of this stuff. So I would say he's done more than I have for Native American people. So I'm not going to criticize him at all. If other people feel like that's an appropriate criticism, go make it. I'm not going to comment too much on it.
Yeah, me neither. And
I will say Blueface though is Blueface specifically is not real because there are not blue people. If you want to say they're cultural appropriating Native Americans, then say that. People who are, I'm not criticizing you. I'm criticizing people to make.
Yeah.
Yes, there is an argument to be made that this is cultural appropriation, but if you call it Blueface, you sound like a clown. I'm sorry. Just that's true.
Yeah, I think there is an argument to be made there about the cultural appropriation as well. But yeah, I will, and yeah, we don't have to talk about this too much more either. But I think I'll just like say just a few things on this, just to close it out. Is you know, as far as I can tell, I don't think Cameron said like anything controversial this time around on this press tours or anything like that. I think he's very like aware of the language he's using when he's talking about this film and what he's doing. And another thing that I'll say too is just kind of echoing your sentiment that he is an activist. From what I have found in my research, he does raise awareness for environmental issues. He actually funds a lot of those like environmentally friendly education programs too.
Yeah.
And something I've also found too, which was like, I need to confirm this actually too, but I think he sits on the NASA advisory board.
Okay.
And he's actually made, you know, several scientific documentaries between, you know, the Avatar and this one too. So, you know, I think Cameron's intentions are in the right place from my perspective, and
I think so too.
Contributing well.
And I also just that quote from 2010. I have an issue with people holding things people said 13 fucking years ago over their head now. If they have demonstrated like allyship and growth in the time in between, like if you hold everything everybody did at any point in time over them forever, no one is going to have any like reason to grow and become a better person, like because they'll see it as, well, I did this one thing and they'll never let it go, so maybe I shouldn't be better because what's the point. He said it in 2010. If you were on the internet in the early 2010s, people who are good people now said and did a lot worse shit than that. So,
this is true.
But enough of that. Let's talk about like, you have any favorite characters? Lighter thing.
Lighter topic. I think either Loak or Kyrie are my favorite ones. Because I really loved those scenes of Loak and his Tulkun.
Hayakon. I love that too.
I thought those like that sequence was one of the best parts of the movie, and like just how he continues to form that connection with him is interesting too. And I just really enjoyed Kyrie as a character. I feel like they need to be careful with her in the next movies of not making her like too OP, you know, because she is clearly connected to Awa, and it's my interpretation that she is like an appendage of Awa
of the god. Okay,
degree. Like some kind of manifestation of it, you know, because she, as far as we know, like maybe I'm just kind of spitballing here of who her father was, but I don't think that she had a father. I think her father was Awa, and that Sigourney Weaver's body was impregnated by Awa.
Yeah, her avatar body.
Yeah, her avatar body, and that's where Kyrie came from. Is she's just an amalgamation of these two species put together. So I'm excited to see where she goes from here, because I think now that she's kind of discovered her connection and her powers, because she was just manipulating all sorts of stuff with her connection there. It was like I'm interested to see where she goes next.
Yes, me too. And I think those are a couple of my favorite characters as well. I continue to like Jake a lot, especially towards the end of this movie. But I think for those who don't remember with Sigourney Weaver from the first movie, Grace is shot and is dying, and Jake takes her to the like spirit tree or whatever and asks the Na'vi tribe to help save her, and they're trying to move her spirit into her avatar body, and it doesn't work. So I think you are right that Awa and Grace combined maybe into this impregnated the Avatar rather than ignited life
Yeah,
into it. Um,
sure.
the only weird thing is that Kiri is like 13 or something, and she's voiced by Sigourney Weaver, who is not 13. And the nothing wrong with the performance, but I wish they had maybe pitched her voice a little bit because I'd say like a third of the time she sounds like a kid, but a lot of the time she does not. And Kiri very much looks like a kid. She has like big inquisitive eyes, and she's like smiling, like a little hippie child all the time, which is very funny. But
Yeah,
but that face paired with Sigourney Weaver's voice sometimes had a little bit of a disconnect for me.
sure. I feel that.
But I love the character a lot. I think she was really fun. And yeah, and I am excited to learn what her deal is because I don't believe she just has epilepsy. There's something else
Yeah,
going on there.
I think
But
so
that
too.
was a scary scene too when she starts
Yeah,
seething underwater. Um,
it's
and
trippy.
we didn't talk about the Tolkien a lot yet, but I think this and this ties into the way of water as a whole. I love how patient the movie was in the exploration of the Metakain culture and how they relate to the ocean, including the Tolkien. It spends a lot of time here, and it
Hmm.
reminds me of to an even greater degree than the first one with the Navi and the forest, but it's similar to that. And I love their relationship with the Tolkien, how they're these super hyper intelligent whales that like make music and math and all this crazy stuff. I've seen critiques that this part of the movie drags, and I disagree. I think we need this full immersion into this part of the world and culture before Quaritch and his team attack it and start ruining everything because we bond specifically with Kate Winslet's Tolkien and her little baby. Um, and that is, it's so
Yeah.
cute and so sweet, and we're all so happy. And then we meet the whalers who just in that brutal whaling scene kill
Uh,
the mom because of the calf, and then the calf dies too. And it's
it's
so
so sad.
devastating.
It's so
Uh,
sad, and it's like it's kind of appropriate for poaching culture too, because they just
mhm.
extract this one thing and then they just leave the carcass, and it's like that's exactly what white people have done for centuries with everything.
Yes,
Like,
yeah, and
uh,
and so many cultures across our world have always understood not to dominate nature, but to live with it and experience the balance and maintain the balance. And for whatever reason, European centric cultures have just destroyed everything in our path for like
yeah,
hundreds of years. It's so fucked up. Like it's
yeah.
it's
Well,
gross. It's really gross, and it's and like if there was ever like environmentalist or vegan agitprop you need to show someone, just show them like this movie. Like
hmm,
that'll make someone go vegan. And they
it
hunt the
can.
whales just for like a tiny little vial of brain serum or whatever to
Yeah.
stop human aging on the dying earth. Like, yeah, that's gonna solve your fucking problems. Make the
Wow,
rich.
that sounds familiar. Like,
Yeah.
but
It's
yeah,
yeah, but
I mean
Cameron
that's
just knows how to make you care a lot. I
he
think he's
does.
very good at making hateable villains, likable heroes, and just, like the save the cat, kick the dog thing from screenwriting,
Hmm.
right? Um he makes something wonderful for you to love, and then he takes it away while creating these villains that are so vile that you like cheer in your chair when they get ripped apart later in the
Hmm.
movie. Loved
Yeah,
watching
watching that.
that guy get his arm ripped off as he like fly.
Yeah. It was like, yes, he got what he
He
deserved.
did. It was
Well,
so satisfying watching Piacon just like fuck shit up. But you feel
yeah.
for him too because he said he would never do that again. And you can see him like all upset at the bottom of the ocean because he's like, fuck, I'm gonna have to do it. I'm gonna have to do it. I don't want to, but I have to. And he does it.
For my friends, I'm gonna save my friends.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
love that. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of to your point too of like how he writes the villains and makes you care. It is interesting that in this film, we don't spend much time with any humans aside from the general very briefly, the
Hmm.
poachers, Spider, and then the Marines. But the Marines
Yeah.
are really Navi, so it's like, I think he's very um intentional
Mm-hmm.
in how he's writing this story. And he doesn't want to give the audience a chance to really connect with any of these antagonist characters. He's very good at like being like, no, 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 you're there on the side, or
Mm-hmm.
we hate you. You know, it's like
Yes.
you're not there.
Yeah.
So he's very smart with that.
And I do think characters like the general are going to be bigger in future movies. And but Cameron has
Yes.
also said that we will be going to Earth in one of the sequels. And
Ooh.
yeah, and one of the parts of that quote was him saying that like not all Navi are good and not all humans are bad, and it's important for Natiri to see that. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that means she will be going to Earth at some point. Why they're going to Earth, I don't know, but that will be very interesting to see. And it will offer a pretty large visual contrast to the first couple movies. So,
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see.
but before we go on to future sequels, I just want to talk about the end of the movie because it worked. Like the whole last hour just works on another level. And I would say, and music too, a lot of the same musical cues from the first movie, especially the same song plays in the first movie when Home Tree gets destroyed as when the Tulkun get hunted and die.
Oh
Um
yes.
it's the same song and it works very well. It's a very sad song.
Yeah.
um but it yeah, the music is great and the whole last hour, like I would say from the point where the kids go to save Pyacon on is just like tension ratcheting up and up and up and up and up. We get some Titanic DNA thrown in there.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
like the ship is tilting on its side, the rooms are filling up, and they're inside this boat trying to find a way out. Like very
Yeah.
Titanic.
Yeah, he was very reminiscent of that movie there. And I mean, I think the sinking of the Titanic, if I remember, was like an hour long sequence. So
Yeah,
it's very
it's a
fitting.
long sequence. But yeah, just all the characters were firing off. We get the death of Natayan, which of course breaks Jake and Natiri, but I I love their interaction after he dies, where he's like, I need you to be strong right now. Like,
Hmm.
I need your help. We have to do this. We have more kids to save. Um,
Hmm.
and it would they're so brutal in that fight too. They're
It's
skewering
wonderful.
people. Um, and the Quaritch Sully fight is pretty fun as well, I would say.
Yeah, that was very cool too. Like, and I appreciated how it gave Quaritch that kind of like one redeeming human characteristic there too. Of like, he's not gonna like
Yes.
he was about to give up everything, but when
Mm-hmm.
she's about to kill Spider, the only living relative of Quaritch as a human,
Mm-hmm.
he's like, okay, that's where I have to draw the line. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, he does have a place where he will stop.
And it showcases a bit of a darker streak to Natiri too,
Hmm.
which at first, when I watched it the first time, I was kind of like, oh man, that's kind of dark for her. But then when rewatching it with you at the beginning, Jake mentions that she never really saw Spider as like part of their family. He was always like a weird
Yeah.
cat that like got dragged in or something. So it's not nice, but it makes sense for her character, and she's grieving and angry, so I kind of get it. And I also love the
Yeah.
recontextualizing of the a son for a son line. She says it to Quaritch as a threat. Jake says it at the end of the movie as he embraces Spider because he lost his son and now he is bringing in a new one into the family.
Hmm.
Nice stuff, you know. Um, it's just a very well constructed screenplay. The visuals are out of this fucking world, and
Oh yeah.
like every element of it, I think improves on the first movie,
Oh yeah.
like to an impressive degree.
It is as good, if not better, than the original for
James
sure.
Cameron is king of the sequel, man. He makes some of the best ones. Like
Good for him. Just don't do a Terminator 3. Give us
he didn't
give,
do Terminator 3.
oh that wasn't him. Okay.
He stopped making Terminator after T2. That's probably why they went to shit.
Yeah, that's definitely why, because yeah, the second one was better. So
And also the second one ended the story. It was good. It should have
yeah,
been left alone.
we didn't need another one, but
Yeah.
money. Uh,
All right.
well,
So
speaking of
let's
sequels, yeah,
some prediction time. Let's go.
let's think about next steps. I think they're setting up romance between Spider and Kiri in this film.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So I see that
They're
happening, and
crushing on each other a lot.
yeah, and I think that'll be an interesting dynamic, especially when you think about Jake and Neytiri and how their relationship started,
Mm-hmm.
human and native, and then Kiri is a mix between, it seems like, Avatar and human,
Mm-hmm.
and uh Awa, and then Spider is just
A
Spider,
guy.
like human. It's like, okay, this is
Yeah.
interesting. We're kind of that's another parallel there, but
Yeah.
and
It's
I
gonna
think
be
that,
real awkward for them when she grows up and is like 10 feet tall and he's still just him
yeah, he's a
sized.
midget. He's a midget by comparison.
Yeah.
But then yeah, I think Cameron has mentioned that he wants to explore like this like fire or ash
Mm-hmm.
tribe in the threequel. So just because this one was water based, the next one's gonna be fire based. I think there will be
Yeah.
some tensions there, especially
Mm-hmm.
if we're going to carry over some of these water clan Navi into the next
Yes.
one, which I think we
I
will.
think you're right because I believe Cameron has also said that the Ash tribe are not like as pure of heart as the forest and water people are.
Mm,
So that
okay,
might be the like not all Navi are good thing that he's talked about.
I'm into
Um
that.
yeah, I've made this prediction a couple times throughout the episode, but I think Quaritch will eventually change sides. I don't think he will in 3, but I think we
Yes.
will see other villainous characters rise to the forefront as Quaritch um slowly changes his ways.
Yeah.
He's the old man Zuko of this series.
He, yeah, I think so. And yeah, I think once he gets back like in the next one, he's gonna obviously be reprimanded for his failure,
Mm-hmm.
which I think will start to drive that wedge for him. The tensions will rise between him and the Sky People. Maybe he will even be like become the outcast,
Mm-hmm.
and he has to leave, and then he'll have his own spiritual journey in the third one or something like that, which will inspire him to change. But I don't know, just kind of spitballing there. Um,
Yeah.
More of a formulaic prediction, because in the first one we had like the big Toruk bird as like
Oh
the big
yeah.
kind of animal to
Mm.
tame or interact with, and this one we had the Tulkum Pakayan. So I think there will be another one in the third one, whatever
Okay.
that will be. Maybe it's going to be a big old T-Rex or something, which I would be okay with.
Cool. Yeah.
um, and I think that Jake will die, not in the next one, but by the end of the franchise,
Mm-hmm.
Jake's time will come to an end.
I think so too. And like we talked, and I do know Cameron made a point to say that Loak will be the narrator of film 3. So his
Okay.
son is going to take over the narrator role. Um, I also think that we'll see more from that like human city. It is wild how much bigger of a presence humanity has on Pandora now with that like hellish like concrete jungle that they're building up for themselves. Um,
Yeah,
but
that's
I
very cool.
think just a funny thing too, like of all the places in the universe that humanity can presumably go to, they are choosing to try to repopulate humanity on a planet with an atmosphere they cannot breathe.
Yeah. We have to go there because reason.
Because the whale brain and the unobtainium from the first movie. Don't forget about unobtainium.
The precious metal that we completely didn't mention in this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if there's going to be another valuable substance that humanity is after.
Yeah. What's the
Um,
third most valuable substance on Pandora?
you know what? Actually, I'm going to make another prediction right off the cuff.
Oh,
We know
okay.
the Ash people are not good, apparently, according to Cameron. I'm going to predict that human antagonists take a deep back seat in part 3. This will be Navi versus Navi. And then humanity will still be around there, but like licking their wounds for
I
movie
like
3.
that.
And then they're
I
going to
think
come
that's a
back
great
with a
idea.
vengeance in part 4.
That's a good
Because
one.
there are going to be 5. 5 is the goal, and they're gonna come out more quickly at this point. The 3
Good.
and 4 are already completely written with significant chunks of 3 and 4 already filmed. Because Cameron did not want his child actors to grow up before he was done with them. So he
Yeah.
filmed all their stuff. So I think every other year we're getting an Avatar until it's done, if I remember
Coolio.
correctly. So, but yeah, do you have any other thoughts on Avatar:
No,
The Way
I think
of
that does it for
Water?
me. Solid film overall. Interested in the next one.
As am I. Let me see here.
But yeah. Now we'll just turn to our final segment of the episode when we talk about what else we've been up to. What have we been
Yeah.
reading, watching, doing, playing, all that good stuff. Dylan, what have you been up to lately?
So I watched The Menu, which I think will be our next episode, right? Is that what you said? Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll do The Menu next. So watch it if you haven't. It's on HBO Max. It's a ton of fun. It's sort of a kind of violent, slightly horror, more black comedy than anything, I would say.
Okay.
It's got Anya Taylor-Joy, Nicholas Hoult, Ray Fiennes, and a bunch of other people, and it's this couple goes to a very, very fancy high dining experience on this island, and then the night turns violent. And I won't say any more than that because it's a fun surprise. Fun surprises all around. Um,
Excellent.
I also started playing Immortals Phoenix Rising on Xbox. It's kind of Ubisoft's Breath of the Wild clone, a little bit,
Oh,
but with Greek mythology. It's fun. I don't know if I'll finish it all the way through, but it was on Game Pass, so I got it for
yeah, might as well.
and it's kind of like corny and charming, but I don't know. I'm liking it. But I also last night watched the pilot of The Last of Us.
Ooh,
Yeah, very good.
sweet. I'm gonna watch that. Yeah.
Yeah, you guys should watch it soon. We should definitely do an episode on that when the show ends, but it's an hour and a half pilot, and it is in terms of adaptation, like if you want a direct adaptation of The Last of Us, it seems like we're getting just that. So that's pretty
Sweet.
cool. I have also been reading the second Sherlock Holmes book, The Sign of Four, which has been a lot of
Mm.
fun. And I saw Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, which was pretty fun. Animation in it was beautiful. I thought the first half kind of dragged a little bit narratively, but the second half was really good and stuck the landing.
Sweet.
And it seems like in the wake of Into the Spider-Verse, studios are more willing to kind of push the boundaries on animation and art style a little bit, and push it. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish does that. So that was nice. What about you? What have you been watching, reading, playing, blah, blah, blah?
So, because we saw Edie Falco in Avatar 2, it got me thinking about The Sopranos again and how I
Okay.
never finished the series. So we're picking it back up, season 4,
Nice.
and oh man, we were like, oh yeah, this is gonna be easy. We'll pick it right back up, and then we had to pause about 10 minutes in and be like, okay, what the fuck happened in the last 10 episodes? We need to remember because this is very important right now. So
Uh-huh.
it's not exactly one of those shows where you can start and stop, but
Yeah.
it's just classic, and I'm loving it again. It's fantastic.
And there are 5 seasons total of Sopranos?
There's I think there's technically six,
Oh, okay.
or 7.
Oh, okay.
There's like 6A and then 6B, if I remember right, which is basically
Got
2
it.
seasons.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
like I don't know why they did it that way, but they must have had a reason at the time.
Mm.
And it's the best time of the year because RuPaul's Drag Race season 15 is here.
Oh my God,
It's
y'all's favorite thing. It's
it's
back.
it's fun and it's gay and it's very fun. I don't know if I have any favorite queens this year because right off the bat, because last year I was rooting for I'm forgetting her name.
Oh no.
Um,
You've let her down.
I have let her down. I can't let this happen. Um, I have to look this up really quickly, but I'm liking this season so far. Um, Willow Pill. Why couldn't I think of that name? Willow Pill last season. So she was a
Okay.
Denver queen too,
Oh,
who won
cool.
last year. Willow Pill. This year I think I like Mistress a lot. She's fun. She's big and sassy and throws lots of shade. Um, so I'm liking her so far. There's a lot of queens. There's like 15 of them, so it's a
Yeah.
lot of names to remember. There's these 2 queens on the season this year too. They're called Sugar and Spice, and they're actually a TikTok duo.
Oh my God.
Which is very interesting because they've never actually done a live drag show. They just do drag on TikTok. So it's
Oh, okay.
interesting to see
Different
them
skill
kind of
set. Yeah.
yeah. It's like, okay, this is weird. And then we started rewatching What We Do in the Shadows, which is an excellent show on Hulu about vampires. It's like a mockumentary format. If you have not watched that, I would recommend checking it out because it is hilarious.
Yeah. Cool.
That's it for me lately. I've been very boring lately.
Lots of rewatches. But
Yeah.
thank you all for watching and or listening. Hope you
Yes.
enjoyed the episode. Hope we didn't upset you too much with any of our comments. But yeah, we'll be back in 2 weeks. Go watch the menu so you can chat about it with us next time. Until that episode, though, Niles, where can people find you online?
I'm on Instagram at Niles Got No Styles. Dylan, where can people follow you online?
Hey, you can find me on Twitter at D-Day Movies, on Instagram at DylanD1026, on YouTube at D-Day Movies, and on Twitch at D-Day_movies. Thank you all so much. Again, please leave us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice, or a thumbs up on YouTube, and share it with all your friends. I don't have income anymore, so share this with people so we can make money from this eventually.
Please, we will love you forever.
Yeah, from a distance though, but
yes,
yes,
from a distance. We understand boundaries, but
yeah.
yes, thank you all so much for listening. We greatly appreciate all of you listening in and checking out the podcast. Thank you.
We'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.